Some actors pretend to be tough on screen, but these 10 Hollywood legends didn't need stunt doubles or special effects because they were genuinely dangerous. From barroom brawlers to decorated war heroes, from martial arts masters to street fighters who grew up swinging, these performers brought authenticity to their action scenes because they'd lived through real violence. If you love discovering the true stories behind Hollywood's greatest action stars, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video for more legendary tales. Today, we're counting down the actors whose toughness wasn't manufactured by studios, but forged through genuine hardship, military service, and countless real fights. These are the 10 legitimate tough guys who could back up their on-screen personas with real-world credentials. Lee Marvin, the granite-faced Marine who became Hollywood's most authentic tough guy, earned his reputation the hardest way possible, through actual combat in World War II. Before he ever threw a punch on screen, Marvin had been shot by a Japanese sniper in the Pacific, spent months recovering from wounds that nearly killed him, and returned to duty because he felt obligated to his fellow Marines. His Purple Heart wasn't a prop, and the 1,000-yard stare that made him terrifying on screen came from memories that haunted him for life. Marvin's transformation from decorated warrior to Hollywood heavy happened almost by accident. After the war, he drifted into acting while dealing with what we'd now recognize as PTSD. Directors quickly realized that Marvin didn't need to act tough. He simply was. His presence on set was so intimidating that younger actors would forget their lines when he stared at them. Director John Borman recalled that during Point Blank, Marvin's intensity was so genuine that actors would instinctively step back when he entered a scene, even during rehearsals. What separated Marvin from Hollywood's manufactured tough guys was his complete lack of pretense about violence. He despised the glamorization of combat and would openly criticize films that made war seem glorious. During the filming of The Dirty Dozen, he pulled aside younger cast members and explained what killing actually did to a person's soul. His co-star Charles Bronson later said the conversation changed his entire approach to action films. The real test of Marvin's toughness came not in stage fights, but in how he handled real confrontations. During a bar altercation in Tucson while filming, 3 locals decided to test the Hollywood tough guy. Witnesses reported that Marvin didn't throw a single punch. He simply stood up, looked at them with the same expression he'd worn while island hopping in the Pacific, and asked if they really wanted to do this. They left immediately. Behind his intimidating exterior, Marvin struggled with alcoholism and nightmares from his service. He never glorified his toughness, once telling an interviewer, "I'm not brave. Brave is what you are when you have a choice. I was a Marine. We just did what we had to do." This humility, combined with his genuine capacity for violence when necessary, made him Hollywood's most respected tough guy. Even notorious hard cases like Robert Mitchum and Charles Bronson acknowledged that Marvin was in a category by himself, not an actor playing tough, but a warrior who happened to act. Audie Murphy, the most decorated American soldier of World War II who became an unlikely Hollywood star, carried a level of proven courage that made even the toughest actors defer to him. Standing at just 5 feet 5 inches and weighing 110 pounds when he enlisted, Murphy was rejected by the Marines and Navy for being too small, but went on to single-handedly hold off an entire German company while wounded, standing on a burning tank destroyer and using its machine gun until ammunition ran out. His Medal of Honor was one of 33 decorations he earned before his 21st birthday. Murphy's transition to Hollywood came when James Cagney saw his Life magazine cover and invited him to California. Directors initially doubted this baby-faced young man could play tough guys until they witnessed his transformation when cameras rolled. During the filming of To Hell and Back, where Murphy played himself, he insisted they tone down his actual exploits because audiences wouldn't believe them. The technical advisor, who'd served with Murphy, confirmed that the real events were far more intense than anything shown on screen. What made Murphy's toughness extraordinary was how it coexisted with severe PTSD that he openly discussed when nobody talked about combat trauma. He slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow for the rest of his life and battled nightmares that left him exhausted. Yet on set, he performed his own stunts with a calmness that unnerved stunt coordinators. During a bar fight scene in Night Passage, Murphy accidentally knocked out a stuntman who came at him too aggressively, his combat reflexes overriding the choreography. The depth of Murphy's genuine toughness showed in his advocacy for veterans' mental health. He publicly admitted his struggles with what we now call PTSD, risking his career to help other veterans feel less alone. When studio executives worried this would damage his image, Murphy reportedly told them, "I've faced German artillery. You think I'm scared of bad publicity?" His co-stars universally described a man who never needed to prove his toughness because everyone already knew. Charles Drake, who worked with Murphy on multiple films, recalled, "Other actors would swagger around sets trying to look tough. Audie would sit quietly, reading poetry. But when action was called, something changed in his eyes that made you understand this man had killed more enemies in combat than most soldiers ever see." Murphy remained Hollywood's most decorated war hero until his death in a plane crash in 1971, never having to throw a single off-screen punch to prove what everyone already knew. Charles Bronson, the coal miner's son who clawed his way from Pennsylvania's underground tunnels to Hollywood stardom, possessed a physical toughness forged in one of America's most dangerous professions. Before he ever threw a punch on camera, Bronson had survived cave-ins, methane explosions, and the soul-crushing labor of mining that killed or crippled most men who attempted it. His hands, permanently scarred from years of swinging a pickaxe in darkness, remained the strongest in Hollywood long after he'd traded coal dust for movie sets. Bronson's journey to Hollywood came after serving as a B-29 tail gunner in the Pacific, flying 25 missions over Japan in what airmen called the Purple Heart position, because tail gunners had the highest casualty rate. Between the mines and the war, Bronson had faced death so many times that Hollywood's staged danger seemed laughable. Directors noticed he never flinched during action scenes, no matter how close the explosions or how realistic the gunfire. What made Bronson genuinely frightening wasn't his physical presence, but his absolute readiness for violence when provoked. During the filming of The Magnificent Seven, a drunk extra made xenophobic comments about Bronson's Lithuanian heritage. Witnesses said Bronson didn't say a word, just walked over and hit the man once. The extra woke up 20 minutes later with a broken jaw. When studio executives worried about lawsuits, Bronson simply said, "He earned it." His reputation for authentic toughness was so established that criminals avoided him in real life. During a home invasion attempt in 1970, 3 armed men broke into what they thought was an empty house. They found Bronson waiting with his own weapon, having heard them coming. Police reports indicate the intruders immediately surrendered, with one later telling officers, "We knew who he was. Nobody's that stupid." Behind the stone-faced exterior, Bronson was haunted by poverty trauma that never left him. He hoarded canned goods in his mansion, unable to forget childhood hunger. He'd calculate the cost of everything in terms of how many tons of coal it represented. This background gave his performances an authenticity that couldn't be taught in acting classes. James Coburn, his co-star in multiple films, observed, "Charlie didn't act tough. He remembered being tough. There's a difference between playing a hard man and being one." When Bronson looked at you with those eyes, you saw someone who'd survived things that would break most people. That authenticity made him Hollywood's most believable tough guy, a man who never needed to pretend because his scars told the real story. Steve McQueen, the reform school survivor who became Hollywood's king of cool, carried a dangerous edge that came from genuine street fighting experience and a childhood spent in institutions. Before he ever rode a motorcycle on screen, McQueen had been a teenage delinquent who joined a circus, worked as a towel boy in a brothel, and spent time in the brig as a Marine after going AWOL. His toughness wasn't cultivated for cameras, but beaten into him through years of surviving situations where violence was currency. McQueen's transformation from juvenile delinquent to Hollywood star never erased his readiness for physical confrontation. During his Marine service, he saved 5 Marines from a tank accident in the Arctic, earning recognition for bravery. But it was his time in reform school that truly hardened him. He'd learned to fight dirty, to strike first when threatened, and to never show weakness. These lessons stayed with him throughout his Hollywood career. What made McQueen authentically dangerous was his complete unpredictability when challenged. During the filming of The Magnificent Seven, he got into an altercation with a stunt coordinator who questioned his ability to handle a particular scene. McQueen didn't argue. He simply demonstrated by performing the stunt perfectly, then told the coordinator to never doubt him again. The crew noticed the coordinator kept his distance after that. His reputation for genuine toughness extended beyond film sets. McQueen's racing career wasn't a celebrity hobby, but a genuine passion where he competed against professionals who didn't care about his fame. He broke his foot in a motorcycle race and finished anyway, had numerous crashes that would have ended most careers, and kept racing even when studios threatened to cancel his contracts. His friend and fellow racer Peter Revson said, "Steve didn't race for image. He raced because danger made him feel alive." Behind the cool exterior, McQueen trusted almost nobody, slept with a gun under his pillow, and maintained physical fitness with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He trained in martial arts with Bruce Lee, not for roles, but because he wanted to be ready for anything. Lee later said McQueen was one of the few students who trained like his life depended on it. James Garner, his co-star in The Great Escape, observed, "Steve had the eyes of someone who'd been cornered too many times as a kid. He was always ready for someone to come at him. That wasn't acting, that was survival instinct." This authentic edge made McQueen Hollywood's most believable rebel, a man whose toughness came from necessity, not choice. Robert Mitchum, the hobo-turned-star who rode the rails during the Depression and served time on a chain gang, brought an authentic menace to Hollywood that came from genuine hardship and street wisdom. Before becoming cinema's most laconic tough guy, Mitchum had survived homeless camps, fought in rail yard brawls, and worked as a professional boxer under an assumed name. His knuckles bore permanent scars from years of bare-knuckle fighting, and his calm demeanor masked someone who'd learned violence was often the only language that mattered. Mitchum's toughness wasn't performative but practical, developed through necessity during his teenage years riding freight trains across Depression-era America. He'd learned to fight off predators in hobo jungles, survived encounters with railroad bulls who'd beat transients for sport, and once escaped from a Georgia chain gang after being arrested for vagrancy. These experiences gave him an authenticity that couldn't be manufactured in acting classes. What made Mitchum genuinely formidable was his complete indifference to Hollywood politics and his willingness to handle problems physically when pushed. During the filming of Blood Alley, a production assistant made the mistake of trying to boss Mitchum around aggressively. Witnesses said Mitchum simply grabbed the man by his shirt, lifted him off the ground with one hand, and calmly explained the error in his approach. The assistant requested a transfer to another production the next day. His reputation preceded him to such an extent that real criminals recognized him as one of their own. While filming Cape Fear, local law enforcement warned the production about potential problems with regional crime figures. When these individuals showed up on set, they didn't come to cause trouble, but to pay respects to Mitchum, whom they considered authentic. One reportedly told him, you're the only one in Hollywood who gets it right. Behind his sleepy-eyed appearance, Mitchum maintained fighting shape throughout his career. He could bench press 300 pounds well into his 60s and practice boxing regularly, not for fitness, but because he enjoyed it. His approach to bar fights was legendary. He'd buy his opponent a drink afterward if they fought well, or buy them several if they didn't, to help with the pain. Director John Huston observed, "Bob wasn't acting when he played tough guys. He was remembering. The difference showed in his eyes. They'd seen things that comfortable people couldn't imagine. When Mitchum walked into a scene, everyone knew this was a man who'd hurt people when necessary and slept fine afterward." Clint Eastwood, the self-made tough guy who transformed from swimming pool digger to Hollywood icon, built his formidable reputation through genuine physical capability and an iron will that came from years of rejection and hard labor. Before becoming the man with no name, Eastwood had survived a plane crash in the Pacific Ocean, swimming 3 miles through shark-infested waters to reach shore. He'd worked as a lumberjack, forest firefighter, and steel worker, developing the lean strength and calloused hands that would later make his threats believable on screen. Eastwood's toughness manifested differently than the brawlers and war heroes. His was a controlled menace, developed through years of being dismissed by studios who said his Adam's apple was too prominent and his speech too slow. This rejection forged a determination that made him genuinely dangerous when crossed. During the filming of Rawhide, a drunk teamster challenged Eastwood to prove he was tough. Witnesses said Eastwood didn't raise his voice, just stood up slowly and asked the man to repeat himself. The teamster apologized and left. What made Eastwood authentically formidable was his methodical approach to confrontation. He didn't fight often, but when he did, it was decisive. During a road rage incident in 1970, a driver followed Eastwood home and attempted to assault him. Police reports indicate Eastwood defended himself with minimal force, subduing the attacker with precise strikes learned from years of studying martial arts, not for roles but for practical self-defense. His reputation for quiet toughness extended to his directorial style. Actors who tried to challenge his authority found themselves facing someone who wouldn't argue, but simply replace them. Gene Hackman recalled that during Unforgiven, a studio executive tried to override one of Eastwood's decisions on set. Eastwood didn't debate. He told the executive to leave his set and not return. The executive left. Behind his squinting stare, Eastwood maintained extraordinary physical fitness well into his 90s, still doing his own stunts at ages when most people struggled with stairs. His workout routine, developed during his labor years, remained punishing. At 70, he could still bench press his body weight and run 5 miles. Eli Wallach, his co-star in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, observed, "Clint never needed to prove anything because his whole presence said, 'Don't test me.' He had the confidence of someone who'd been tested by life and passed. That's not something you can fake." When Eastwood walked onto a set, everyone knew this was a man who'd handle whatever came his way. James Coburn, the lanky Nebraskan who studied martial arts before it was fashionable and possessed hands that could break boards or bones with equal efficiency, represented a different breed of Hollywood tough guy. Before his acting career, Coburn had studied with genuine martial arts masters in an era when most Americans thought karate was a type of fish. His dedication to physical combat wasn't for show, but stemmed from a deep philosophy about violence as both art and necessity, making him one of the few actors who could legitimately claim martial arts expertise before Bruce Lee made it popular. Coburn's toughness came from an unusual combination of Midwestern farm strength and Eastern martial arts discipline. Growing up during the Depression, he'd learned to work 18-hour days during harvest, developing the wiry strength that would later surprise opponents who underestimated his lean frame. When he discovered martial arts in the 1950s, he approached it with the same work ethic, training until his hands were raw and his body memorized movements that became second nature. What made Coburn genuinely dangerous was his ability to remain completely relaxed until the moment violence was necessary. During the filming of The Magnificent Seven, a stunt coordinator doubted Coburn could perform a complex knife-fighting scene without a double. Coburn demonstrated the sequence at full speed, his blade stopping millimeters from the coordinator's throat. The coordinator immediately approved him for all his own knife work. His reputation for authentic combat skills led to an unusual Hollywood distinction. Real martial artists sought him out for training. Bruce Lee, who would later become his close friend and training partner, initially approached Coburn as a student before they began exchanging techniques. Lee later said that Coburn had the fastest hands of any non-Asian martial artist he'd encountered, capable of striking with precision that most fighters achieved only after decades of training. Behind his easy grin and laid-back demeanor, Coburn maintained a training regimen that would exhaust men half his age. He practiced martial arts daily until arthritis finally stopped him in his 70s, and even then, he adapted his training rather than quit. His philosophy about toughness was simple. Real strength isn't about winning fights. It's about being so prepared that fights don't happen. Sam Peckinpah, who directed Coburn in several films, observed, "Jim had this quality where he could be laughing one second and lethal the next. It wasn't acting. He'd trained his body and mind to switch into combat mode instantly. That's why his action scenes looked different from other actors. He wasn't pretending to know how to hurt people." Burt Lancaster, the circus acrobat turned Hollywood powerhouse, possessed a physical prowess that came from years of performing death-defying acts without safety nets. Before he ever stepped in front of a camera, Lancaster had developed the strength and agility of a professional athlete, performing triple somersaults and hand-to-hand catches that required absolute precision or death. His hands, powerful enough to support his entire body weight on parallel bars, could also deliver punches that stuntmen learned to avoid even during choreographed fights. Lancaster's toughness manifested in his complete fearlessness regarding physical danger. Having faced genuine life-or-death situations nightly under the big top, Hollywood's staged action seemed tame by comparison. During the filming of The Crimson Pirate, he insisted on performing a scene where he swung from ship to ship on ropes, something insurance companies forbade. Lancaster did it anyway during a meal break when executives weren't watching, completing the stunt perfectly and presenting the footage as a fait accompli. What made Lancaster genuinely formidable was his combination of acrobatic agility and raw strength. At his peak, he could perform one-arm pull-ups, walk on his hands for 100 yards, and leap over objects shoulder height from a standing position. During a bar altercation in 1954, witnesses reported that Lancaster didn't throw punches, but simply grabbed his attacker, lifted him overhead like a barbell, and deposited him outside. The man didn't return. His reputation for authentic physical capability meant that even notorious Hollywood tough guys respected his strength. Kirk Douglas, his frequent co-star and occasional rival, admitted that during their famous fight scene in Gunfight at the OK Corral, he was genuinely worried about Lancaster's intensity. "Burt didn't know how to pull punches," Douglas recalled. "When we fought on screen, I was actually defending myself." Behind his movie star smile, Lancaster maintained the discipline of a professional athlete throughout his career. He trained daily until his 70s, treating his body like a tool that needed constant maintenance. His approach to physical fitness wasn't about vanity, but functionality. He wanted to be capable of performing any physical feat a role might require. Director John Frankenheimer observed, "Burt approached action scenes like an athlete approaching competition. There was no bravado, just professional assessment of what needed to be done. He'd calculate angles, test surfaces, measure distances, then he'd execute perfectly. Watching him work was like watching a mathematician solve equations with his body. That wasn't movie toughness. That was genuine physical mastery." Kirk Douglas, the ragman's son who fought his way from poverty to stardom with his fists and his will, embodied a ferocious intensity that came from genuine hunger and desperation. Before Hollywood knew his name, Douglas had been Isser Danielovich, a Jewish kid from Amsterdam, New York, who learned to fight defending himself from anti-Semitic attacks. His broken nose, which became his trademark, wasn't a boxing injury, but the result of a childhood street fight where he refused to stay down despite being outnumbered. Douglas's toughness was forged in wrestling rings where he paid for college by taking on all-comers at carnival sideshows. These weren't choreographed matches, but brutal contests where losing meant going hungry. He developed a fighting style that was more survival than sport, learning to use elbows, knees, and whatever else kept him standing. This background gave him an authenticity that showed in every physical scene he performed. What made Douglas genuinely formidable was his volcanic temper combined with legitimate combat skills. During the filming of Spartacus, which he produced and starred in, a studio executive tried to override his creative decisions. Douglas didn't argue or negotiate. He grabbed the executive's desk and flipped it over, then calmly explained that he'd funded the film with his own money and would make decisions accordingly. The executive never challenged him again. His reputation for intensity extended beyond controlled sets. During a 1960 incident at a Hollywood restaurant, 3 men made anti-Semitic remarks within his earshot. Witnesses reported that Douglas stood up, walked to their table, and asked them to repeat what they'd said. When they did, he overturned their table and invited them outside. They declined and left immediately. Douglas returned to his meal as if nothing had happened. Behind his dimpled smile lurked someone who never forgot the poverty and discrimination that shaped him. He maintained fighting fitness into his 90s, working out with a punching bag he'd installed in every home he owned. His philosophy was simple. I've been fighting my whole life. First for food, then for respect, then for art. The day I stop fighting is the day I die. Burt Lancaster, his frequent co-star and sparring partner, observed, "Kirk didn't play tough guys, he exercised demons." Every fight scene was personal for him. He'd been knocked down so many times in real life that acting tough was just remembering. That intensity you saw on screen? That was Kirk remembering every person who ever told him he'd never make it. Danny Trejo, the ex-convict who transformed from San Quentin's lightweight boxing champion to Hollywood's most authentic tough guy, represents the ultimate redemption story built on genuine violence and hard-earned wisdom. Before he ever appeared on screen, Trejo had survived 11 years in California's toughest prisons, won boxing titles behind bars, and participated in prison riots that left men dead. His face, marked by acne scars and hard living, tells the story of someone who didn't play a criminal but had been one. Trejo's toughness wasn't theoretical, but proven through survival in environments where weakness meant death. In San Quentin and Folsom, he'd fought for respect with makeshift weapons and bare hands, earning a reputation that protected him in yards where racial violence was daily currency. He'd been stabbed, beaten, and left for dead, yet kept fighting because stopping meant dying. This experience gave him an authenticity that no method acting could replicate. What made Trejo genuinely formidable was his transformation from violence to redemption without losing his edge. When he arrived on movie sets as a drug counselor helping an actor, his presence immediately commanded respect. Edward James Olmos, who gave him his first role, recalled, "Danny walked onto the set, and every tough guy actor suddenly looked like they were playing dress-up. This man had lived what they were pretending." His reputation in both criminal and Hollywood circles meant nobody tested him. During the filming of Heat, a young actor made dismissive comments about ex-convicts being hired for authenticity. Trejo didn't threaten or posture. He simply told the actor about watching men die over coffee disputes in prison. The actor apologized and kept his distance for the remainder of filming. Behind his intimidating appearance, Trejo used his toughness for protection rather than aggression. He became known for defending young actors from exploitation, standing up to abusive producers, and using his fearsome reputation to create safe spaces on sets. His philosophy was simple. I've been the bad guy for real. Now I play bad guys to show kids where that road leads. Robert Rodriguez, who directed Trejo in multiple films, observed, "Danny doesn't act tough because he's already been through hell and survived. When he tells you he's killed people, you believe it because it's true. But what makes him truly tough is that he chose to change, to help others, to become something better. That takes more strength than any prison fight." This authentic transformation from genuine criminal to Hollywood icon makes Trejo unique. A man whose toughness was documented in prison records before it was ever captured on film. These 10 tough guys weren't manufactured by Hollywood publicity departments, but forged through real combat, genuine hardship, and authentic violence that left permanent scars. From Lee Marvin's Pacific battlefield trauma to Danny Trejo's prison survival, from Audie Murphy's decorated heroism to Steve McQueen's reform school fights, each man brought truth to their performances because they'd lived through worse than anything a script could imagine. What makes these actors legendary isn't just their toughness, but how they transformed real pain into memorable art, proving that authenticity beats acting every time. Which of these genuine tough guys surprised you most? Did you know about Murphy's war record or Trejo's prison championships? Hit that like button, subscribe for more Hollywood history, and drop a comment sharing which actor you think was truly the toughest.